Hello and welcome everyone. Different arrangement. Hello. Glad to have y'all with us today. We wanted to get so the choir loft seating is not available today because of you need to see the images, right? So welcome to everyone who's joining us via live stream as well. What I'm giving you is something that you can read later. It'll make its way around. So I would ask you, even though I'm handing this out now because some of you have to leave, really, if you would not dig into that too deep right now, that'd be great because it'll be a ruffling of papers that may distract the person next to you, okay? They're coming. They're coming. Shannon's coming. So one of the things that happened during the sabbatical that I didn't anticipate was I started writing poetry. I've never written poetry in my life, always written prose. And so I used this as a way to sort of process what I was seeing and experiencing. And I'm going to talk about, I've given you 6 of I wrote 35 poems.
Oh, my.
Some of them are little ditties.
Are we supposed to memorize these?
No. So I'm giving you a sample of some that relate to our content for today. Today's program I've titled Castles and Cathedrals, What Mean These Stones? And that reference you may get from the Hebrew Bible, from the book of Joshua, where Joshua, where the children of Israel have come across, they've escaped, into the promised land, and they're instructed to build a stone monument. And the question is, why are we doing this? And the answer is, in future generations, when your children and grandchildren shall ask, what do these stones mean? You'll be able to tell them the story of God's miraculous deliverance. And as I was touring through Europe and seeing all these old things, that scripture just kept coming back and back to me because I was trying to interpret what does this mean? What do these buildings mean, and what is the story behind them? Because often when you're dealing with cathedrals and castles, there is a tremendous story behind them as well. And so what I want to do today is unpack a little bit of the story of some things that I saw along the way. So bear with me, and I'm going to turn off the lights so that we can see the screen better. Oops. Other lights. All the lights. And that's going to sleep already. Unfortunately, my clicker is not working with this particular thing, so I'm going to have to do this manually. I wanted to show you, first of all, where I was. So here's London, right? So I flew into London, and then I rode the train all the way up here to a place called Harden, Wales. And that's spelled Hawarden in Welsh, but it's pronounced Harden. It looks like Hawarden. Harden is about a 30-minute bus ride west of a place called Chester that is an old Roman walled city. It's a fascinating place. I'm going to talk more about it in just a moment. But you can see it's just south of Liverpool, and here's Manchester over here. What you don't see over here is the northern Welsh coast. So a lot of the places I went were along there because I rode the train, and you'll see that, and the bus out different places. So here again is a close-up. Here's Chester. Here's where I was in a place called Harden. And then here is this coastline here. And some of the places that you're going to see me talk about, Llangollen is a Welsh place. That's where we'll talk about the by Crucis Abbey ruins. Holywell is the place of St. Winifred's Well that we're going to talk about. Liverpool, and there's a couple of cathedrals there we're going to talk about. Abergele over here is a place where I went to a castle that I'll tell you about. And then all the way over here, there's more there, but I didn't put that on there. We got off the train in a place called Bangor, and there's a really famous castle there that we're going to talk about as well. And then Chester, we're going to talk about that also. So you clear as mud on all that? Okay, this is where I stayed for 3 weeks. This is called Gladstone's Library. Sorry. on this side to do the clicker. William Gladstone was a British Prime Minister 4 times, late 19th century. He was very progressive for his day, and before he died, he donated part of his library. In 1895, at the age of 85, he gave 40,000 pounds. Okay, think 40,000 pounds in 1895, and much of his own library to create this place. Right. His family estate that still exists today is across the highway and the roads, across the road from this, but it's probably a 3/4 mile walk down a hill to get there. I'll show you it in a few moments. He personally, at age 85, used a wheelbarrow to transport his library books from his home to this place before it was fully built. Right? The bulk of this was built after his death as a memorial to him. So yes, it looks like Hogwarts, and it's just a lovely place. It's a charity. It's a non-profit that's affiliated with the Church of England, but not owned by the Church of England. The warden, who's the director of the library, has to be Church of England clergy. So on this side, and it's sort of an H, and you're only seeing the front of it here. Over here is all residential and common areas, dining room, and so forth. And on the other side is the library. And this was my first room there when I was there by myself for 2 weeks. Those are not real books, that's wallpaper. I had a little desk for reading there. And this is the dining room, where I spent a lot of time because I ate breakfast there every day and dinner most every day as well. And this is the kind of place where a lot of people, there's about 30 guest rooms. It's sort of like a very nice pension. A lot of people coming through, mainly of 4 types. Either clergy, academics doing research, writers, like me. I hit a couple of these boxes. People who are there writing. The library is 250,000 volumes today, and it's a wide-ranging library, but it mainly focuses on British history, 19th century English literature, and theology. And the theology collection is really up to date. I was very, very impressed with that. And so people were coming through, like I met several people who were historical fiction writers who were there researching their characters in order to write. And so I would just sort of go into the dining room, you know me, and find someone I didn't know every day and sit down and hear their story. And one of the poems I wrote, I'm just going to read one of these to you. This the one on the front that has this photo with it. I'm supposed to be reading or maybe writing. These are the tasks I said I would do, yet here I am sitting once again. New guests arrive each breakfast and dinner. There are stories to hear, journeys to map. New friends become old friends when staying longer, like me. A few don't want to be bothered, keep heads bowed to avoid being seen. But most are happy to talk if I break the ice first. My name is Mark. Where are you from? The stories engage me like traveling afar, learning new words and places, hearing history and politics explained. The books on my desk will wait once again, like yesterday too. I'm too busy for books. I'm reading the world.
All right.
And that's what this place was, just the remarkable experience of being able to interact with people from all over. There were not many Americans here. There were a few. And there are Americans who come through there. But we were by far the minority. This is mainly people from the UK. And so I met all sorts of wonderful, wonderful people there. Let me show you the library. So again, it looks like Hogwarts. This is just one part of the library. And so you have access to this when you're staying there. And I could just sort of come and go at will out of there. I actually had a key. They let me have a key so I could let myself in. Yeah.
You must have had a trustworthy face.
I don't know. So when Allison got there on the 3rd week, we switched rooms to a double, and we were across. And this is the St. Deniel's Church, that's right next to it. It's an Anglican church, Church of England, cemetery that you'll see there. And that cemetery, the oldest grave we could identify in it was from the early 1700s. The church dates back 1,000 years. 1,000 years there. It's a remarkable place, and there's a chapel inside named for Gladstone as well. And by the way, the British pronunciation is Gladstone. So you'll hear me slip into that sometime. People would say, "Welcome to Gladstone's." You got to get the emphasis on the right syllable there. Beautiful, beautiful church. Here's a view of the cemetery. We went on a little walk through the cemetery one day. A lot to see there. And the tulips were all, and daffodils were all in bloom. Really beautiful. Okay, let's see. Some of you saw this on Facebook. This is the church bells. Come on. So I learned a new word, campanology, the study of bells and the ringing of bells. And this is a big thing in the UK because almost every town or village has a church like this that has bells in it. And by bells, I mean a set of bells that are usually arranged in a tower in a circle. And they have long ropes that come down, and they're manually rung. And there's a whole big thing about this that you can learn to do this. Bell practice at St. Daniel's Church is on Monday nights from about 6 to 8.
Oh.
And let me just say, they need the practice. It was a cacophony. What you heard for Sunday morning was much, much better than that. But it was a fascinating thing to learn about that culture that continues on out of this kind of edifice, that even in a post-Christian world, the church plays a central role in communities, particularly with the ringing of the bells, not only on the hour, because this church also has a bell, an automated bell in its tower that rings on the hour and the half hour. Some of them ring on the quarter hour as well.
How many bell ringers does it take to do that?
At least 6. Depending on the church. This one I think has 6 bells. The cathedrals, like we're getting to here, typically have 12 or 13. And so if you look it up, what they'll do is you'll see them standing in a circle like this with the ropes coming down because the bells above them are arranged in a circle up in the tower as well. Okay, this is the Chester Cathedral. So Chester's that town that I told you I rode the train to, and it's an old Roman city. This is a beautiful cathedral that was one of my favorite places, and I want to tell you a lot about it because it's so pivotal. It was formerly the Abbey Church of a Benedictine monastery dedicated to a saint I'd never heard of before, Saint Werburg. Learned a little bit about Saint Werburg here as well. The building, as it is today, dates from 1093. It's been expanded and worked on since, and I'll tell you more about that. And then a lot of work done in the early 16th century as well. The site itself, where this church is located, would have been used for Christian worship since the Roman times. And what's fascinating about this is, within this building, all the major styles of English medieval architecture are present, beginning with Norman to what's called Perpendicular. They're all represented within this building. I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. There probably was a Christian basilica on this site during the Roman era as well. So this abbey, this is fascinating. The abbey that was there, and I'll show you more of the abbey, was created by a guy named Hugh Lupus, who was the Earl of Chester, who had a lot of atoning to do for bad deeds he had done. And at the end of his life, decided he needed to get right with God, so his legacy would be good, and he could get into heaven, right? And so he teamed up with someone whose name you've heard, St. Anselm, to do the fundraising and the construction initially of this abbey that was here. The earliest parts of the structure date back to 1093 at that time. Now, in 1538, during the dissolution of the monasteries, for those of you who are up on your English history here, remember the little guy named Henry VIII, right? Henry, when he took over the church, disbanded all the Catholic monasteries, right, except for 8. He saved 8, and this was one of the 8. And what happened, the way they tell the story, is someone comes in and says to the monks there, and the head monks, we know that you've been a Benedictine monastery up to today. If you'd like to stay on beginning tomorrow, we would welcome you to be part of the leadership of our new Church of England. Will you accept? And what is the answer that you've got to give? Yes. And so one day they were Benedictine monks, and the next day they were clergy in the Church of England, and continued in the same place where they were. A pretty interesting bit of history. Okay, now let me move on and show you. So this is a fascinating juxtaposition of stained glass. This stained glass was installed in the 1990s in a cathedral that dates to the 11th century. Why is that? Well, several reasons. One, Chester is located just far enough south of Liverpool that during World War II it was not bombed, except accidentally. There were sort of vibrations and so forth from near misses or bombs that got dropped early accidentally or something. And so the structure has remained here. Now, what's interesting about this stained glass is that during World War II, the reverberations from all that caused 3 of the windows to lose their stained glass. And it was not until the 90s that they came in and replaced it with this. And this is modern, contemporary stained glass. This is, I believe, the Holy Spirit window, which is a really remarkable thing. I love the juxtaposition of the old and the new in this. So one of the things I learned from my friends I met at Gladstone's was that within the UK in particular, there's a strong sentiment that when you're going to build something adjacent to a historic building, you should not build it to imitate the historic structure or architecture. That's just silly. What they would much prefer is that you build something contemporary to be a contrast to it. So one of the friends I made who teaches at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland was telling me that in Scotland, in particular, in Edinburgh, there's a big movement there, and it may even be building code, that you cannot build something to look like an old structure, even if it's adjacent to or on top of or near a historic. It needs to be a contrasting style. And I really liked that idea of bringing the contemporary into the ancient. And this window is a great example of how beautiful that could be, I think, when you have the old stones and the new glass within there. This is an even newer window in the back of the cathedral, and it's beautiful. Each of these are saints that are important in the story of that cathedral, including St. Werburgh, who you can go research on your own if you'd like to know about St. Werburgh. This is an old door on the side. It used to be the front door of the cathedral. And look at this. Here's the little pilgrim's door. When people would make pilgrimages to the cathedral back in the old days, they would come in there. That gives you an idea of what's going on there. I climbed up the bell tower. Here's 206 steps in a very narrow kind of thing. And this is a view I took of the city. This is the city hall across the street. Chester's a beautiful place. That the part of the city center has been redone in a Tudor style. That's also fascinating. Oh, that's the wrong cathedral. I thought I had.
More of the wrong cathedral?
I accidentally deleted a photo that I didn't want to delete.
Oh.
Maybe it's in here somewhere else. One of the things that's in this cathedral is what do they call it? Consistory court. It's one of the few remaining courtrooms. It's a bishop's consistory court. It's unique in its survival in England, and it heard its last case in the 1930s. And from this court, there was only one record of someone being sentenced to burn at the stake. So it's that kind of court, right? And I've lost that photo. I must have accidentally deleted it, for which I apologize. Now, we're moving on to Liverpool here. Dang, I thought I had these in order. I really thought I was doing a good thing, and I had my order screwed up. Sheesh. This is the Liverpool Cathedral that I'll tell you more about as we go. That I just have totally screwed this up. This is back to Chester. This is where I was able to hear a rehearsal for they were doing the Bach's St. John Passion one night with a big choir. I did hear an organ recital here one day as well. Here's a view of the choir rails at the Chester Cathedral. Beautiful ornate woodwork against the stone. Each one has separate detail, different animals or faces on each one. I mean, it's an incredible piece of work. Very, very beautiful. There's another view of the choir, the choir loft at the Chester Cathedral as well. Here's what I was talking about. Look at these things that are next to each other, and you'll see remnants of 4 architectural styles literally next to each other. Because what they did was they built originally in a Norman style, and then when Norman was out of fashion, the monks wanted to be contemporary, and they came in and either built over or tore down and rebuilt parts of the building to come up to Gothic style, and then whatever else came next. They kept updating, and so you'll see this is a place they left to show you the overlap of the architectural styles. I like this because this is in the cathedral. This was a tribute that was given by a donor. The donor is the guy in the middle, and these are his 2 wives, not at the same time. And it was a memorial to them, and originally their hands were in prayer like this, right? And then during the parliamentary reign, when the Puritans took over, they came into places like this and didn't like those displays of super piety, and they chopped the hands off. They left the statues there, but chopped the hands off because that was improper. And so this is a wonderful reminder of that period. Now, also in this church, there are beautiful mosaics. Along one entire wall is Old Testament stories in mosaic like this. They're absolutely beautiful. And so again, stained glass was originally made to tell biblical stories to illiterate people. The mosaics served the same purpose because you could walk into this cathedral and see before you the story. This is Abraham and Isaac. You can see the story playing out there within this. Oh, here's the consistory court. Yeah, so that's where the presiding bishop would sit up there, and that is a much bigger room than it looks. The scale is such that it's so tall, but that room is probably a little bit larger than this room. It's just a very, very tall ceiling as well. This is the cloisters. So back when it was an abbey, the monks would sit at desks right here, but imagine that without any glass. The stained glass was added later. It was open air. The history recounts the monks having to break the ice in their inkwells in order to do it, because it gets cold there, right? But still, you can see the vaulted ceilings. Imagine working there in this. So this cathedral was originally built not as a working church for the people, but for the monks of the abbey. So it was a place of worship for them that was only occasionally open to the larger community. Here's a contemporary thing again. Here's the altar in the cathedral. All the ancient stuff around, and then a more contemporary cloth on the communion table there. That I thought was a nice juxtaposition of that. Okay, now we've moved down south a little bit into Wales from where I was. This is a place called Llangollen. I rode a train and a bus to get there, and I got on the bus and I didn't know where to get off, and I went too far, and I had to ask the bus driver for help, and I had to backtrack. It was beautiful. Saw lots of sheep. Lots of sheep along the way. This is called Via Crucis Abbey. And this is, let me get my dates right on this. This is a Cistercian abbey that was built in 1201. 1201. And it was dissolved in 1537 during the dissolution of the monastery. So where the Chester Cathedral survived, this one didn't. Henry VIII closed it down, and it fell into ruin. Now, what's fascinating, I don't think you can see this really well here. See that white stuff back there? That is a trailer park. Or as they say in the UK, a caravan park. Honest to God, they have put in a trailer park next door to the ruins of this abbey. It is unbelievable. And to get here, since I was on the train and on the bus, I actually went to the nearby town, Llangollen, that's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of a viaduct there. And my Google Maps said it was 1 mile to walk out here. I'm a pretty fast walker. It took me 1 hour to walk out there and 1 hour to walk back. I walked 185 miles in 5 weeks, according to my phone app. Anywhere from 3 to 10 miles a day, which is how I was able to eat croissants and gelato. It just is. It's just holding itself up. There are no reinforcements in there. This is another view of the remains here, and I'll just show you several different views. Okay. Even a door remains. There's a view through the grate of that door as well. This was the cloister area for this abbey. The walls around here are gone, so you have to imagine that being the courtyard area where the monks lived. And look at the ornateness. I mean, this is built in 1200, right? I mean, this is amazing, right? This was the well that the monks got their water from. That's in that courtyard as well. Here you can see the differentiation in times. With an addition in different stone on this. There's a view. I mean, this would have all been tiled. The vaulted, all the tiles obviously gone at this point. These were fireplaces in the chapter room of the monastery. There again, beautiful arches, and there would have been glass in there as well. That's just another view of that. And let's see. There's me. Let's see if you can hear this, if it's loud enough. So as I stand in this ancient abbey, I'm contemplating what it must have been like for the monks and others who lived here from about 1200 through 1537. I imagine it was a hard life for them, and yet there's a beautiful monument here left to their faith. The abbey was open for about 330 years, and during that time, no doubt, hundreds, perhaps thousands of people came through here and were shaped in ways that really shaped Wales and all of England. It's an interesting lesson to think about churches that are dying today and what we think about them and the remains that they may leave behind. A lot to think about here. So I was there almost by myself that day. There were a few other people wandering through, but again, it was a cold, sort of dreary day. And it was really haunting to be walking around this place and just to imagine the religious life that had been there. Is like if these walls could talk. If the ghosts of this place could talk to me, what would they say? And so I stood where I was there and thought to myself, how in the world could I understand this? Okay, I've got to move on. Now we're in Liverpool. And this is called the Bombed Out Church. Have you ever been to Liverpool and seen the Bombed Out Church? Okay. It's originally St. Luke's Church. And it was built between 1811 and 1832, but it was damaged. It was almost destroyed during the Liverpool Blitz of 1941. So during the early part of World War II, 1941, and they've left it intentionally as a roofless shell, as a memorial for the war. one of the things that struck me in visiting places in Liverpool was the tremendous sacrifice that the British made in both World War I and World War II. In a moment, well, one of those photos that was way back there out of order was in the Liverpool Cathedral. There is a register that they've recently put in where they have handwritten in calligraphy, the names of 40,000 men who died in World War I. 40,000 from Liverpool and that region. From that 40,000. Not including the names of 4,000 women and children who died there. Right? So this is a wonderful memorial. Now, again, when you're here, World War I and World War II sort of get smashed together, a lot of the history. So we're going back and forth. Bear with me on this, okay? Here's another view of the sun shining through the open window there on this. On the grounds, they've installed temporarily, they're trying to get it permanent, they've got to get permission from the city. This is a piece of art called The Truce. So do y'all remember the story from World War I on Christmas Eve when there was a truce between the British and the Germans? The British troops heard the German troops singing Stille Nacht, Silent Night, and they came together, laid down their weapons, and they had a Christmas truce. They played football together, meaning soccer, and they exchanged gifts before they started killing each other again the next day. So this piece of work, this sculpture, Allison's been lecturing on the difference between a statue and a sculpture. This sculpture memorializes that. Here's another view of that, which I thought was fascinating because the original, the wrought iron fence around here has the fleur-de-lis on it, which is a nice juxtaposition to that.
When you say football, you mean soccer?
I mean soccer.
Okay.
There's another view of the bombed out church with some new growth on it too. So if you think about, look at this, new life, growing in the midst of ruins, always interesting, I think. Now, we're at the Liverpool Cathedral. The Liverpool Cathedral is a Church of England cathedral. It is the largest cathedral and religious building in Britain. So it's bigger than Westminster Abbey. It's the largest cathedral and religious building in Britain. It's based on a design by a guy named Giles Gilbert Scott, who at the time he got the commission to do this in 1903 was 22 years old and had never designed a single building before.
Oh.
But he presented an idea to them that was grand, that is not this building. It's a fascinating bit of history because he sold himself on an idea that they found compelling. And then the established architectural world was just in an uproar. You choose this upstart to do this. And then they found out he's Roman Catholic. And that was, the whole thing nearly came undone, but still they stuck with him. He had his original plans drawn, and then he went elsewhere in Europe to look at the great existing cathedrals, and came back and said, my plan is not right. I need to rework the whole thing. And they had already started building what's called Lady Chapel, which I'll show you in a moment. So the chapel was already being built, the smaller chapel was being built, and he changed the design of everything around it. He ended up with 2 towers instead of 1 to support the bells and all that. Beautiful stained glass. I'm not going to tell you the whole story of this. This is an art installation that was there when I was there. These are women, they're photographs, 7-foot tall photographs, hanging on banners of women who have witnessed violent deaths in Colombia. It's a really remarkable story. I'm showing you this today to show you the scale of this place. It is absolutely enormous. One of my favorite cathedrals that I saw here. Here is some detail work inside the cathedral. Beautiful stained glass. Oh, there's the book. I thought we'd lost it already. That's the register of the 40,000 who were killed in World War I. It's in one of the side chapels there. This is Lady Chapel. This is the side chapel to the cathedral that was built first. And you can see this grand scale of it. I was there during Lent, and you'll notice here, there behind those green doors is a large wood carving, I'm told, of the Holy Family. And in their tradition, during the Lenten season, you know how we close the shutters in the sanctuary? They close off any art like that. It gets covered up in the worship space. And they don't open it again until Easter. So that's why that was closed off. There's engravings in stone all the way around the edges here that's John 3:16 that you can follow around. Very ornate lettering as well.
When you say it's a side chapel, was it part of the main chapel, or was it
So you have the main cathedral, and you walk down some stairs to a lower level, to the side of it, and this chapel it's all attached. It's one building, but it's a separate space. Unlike some cathedrals that have little side chapels, right? This is truly its own space. And it was built first. So it's McKeever Chapel to our sanctuary, right? There's a bit of a difference. Also down there in this chapel, there's stained glass that they've done devoted to important women. And this is John Wesley's mother, Susanna Wesley. Of course, there's a connection between Anglicanism. I mean, John Wesley came out of Anglicanism, right? Oh, here's the bell tower. I climbed up in the bell tower here. And I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 13 bells there. And the 13th bell is necessary in this structure because of to emulate a sharp or a flat in the scale. There's a whole thing behind that as well. Now, right down the street is this. And this is the Roman Catholic Cathedral. Literally, you walk down, it's called Hope Street, and you walk from one end to the other, and you come upon this. It's the Liverpool Metropolitan Cathedral, and I'll give you 2 guesses on the decade in which this was built. And the second one doesn't count.
1960s.
Yes. Absolutely. There was supposed to have been a cathedral built here much, much earlier, early 20th century. After the potato famine, a lot of folks came from Ireland to Liverpool. Large, then Roman Catholic, I mean, everyone else had been converted to Anglicanism, right? Large Roman Catholic population came in, and they wanted a cathedral, but no one could afford to build it. And they had plans to, actually, there's a crypt underneath here that was built first. That is still there, and then they ended up changing the design on this. A guy named Frederick Gibbers was the architect of this, and despite appearances, he did win a worldwide design competition, and construction began in 1962 and was completed in 1967. Now, I will tell you, this is one of the wildest cathedrals I've ever stepped foot in. And people in Liverpool either love it or hate it. It's affectionately known as the Wigwam. Let's go inside.
what is that on the front?
It's a sculpture. It's a relief kind of thing. Here's the inside of the cathedral.
Is it blue?
It is blue. It's blue light. It's like you've walked into Star Trek. The early version, William Shatner Star Trek. Right? And this is a crown of thorns up above, which is, I mean, it's a nice interpretation. It's weird, but what I liked here with some of the side chapels, so this is all a circle, and then around the circle you have these side chapels, and some of them are a bit more tasteful. So here's one of those side chapels. Again, instead of blue lights, you have red lights in this one. So everything's really sort of space age.
Were those benches?
Yes, those were benches. Mm-hmm. Okay, now we're moving. We're moving on, and I'm going to be very quick about this. This is a place called Carnarvon Castle. No, that's not Carnarvon. That is. Just a minute. Dang it. I knew I had my notes out of order here. Girich Castle, and if you're having trouble with your Welsh, that's spelled Gwrych. Gwrych. And as we go through this looks like a medieval castle. It is not. It was built in 1819 and 1825 to look like a medieval castle. All right?
They were supposed to, that's right.
Yeah, well, they didn't get the memo on that. Right? And so I'm showing you this because it's a remarkable place that also has fallen into ruin because no one could sustain it. And they're trying to bring it back. But it's an example of the opposite of what I talked about earlier about trying to emulate a previous era. Right? Trying to emulate a previous era. This is, I mean, that looks like a medieval castle, right?
Yeah.
It was built early 19th century.
Was that the first medieval times restaurant?
I think it could have been a medieval times restaurant. Yes, Jim. Good call. Yeah, I mean, it's expansive. It's just enormous through there. You can see some of that. They're trying to restore some of this and put some glass back in. There was a lot of work going on when I was there. Okay, now, so last week, or week before. Okay, sorry. Here we go. Week before, I believe, I talked to you about going to visit the well.
Yes,
Some of you remember that story?
yes.
This is called St. Winifred's Well, and it's a place called Holywell. So this was about an hour's bus ride from where I was staying. And you can see here a pool that's been built later. The actual well, the original well, is right inside there, just on the other side of that wall, and it feeds this whole thing now. This is a chapel that was built above there in the early 1500s, around 1501. Saint Winifred is a saint I'd never heard of before, also, another W word. She is said to have discovered this well. This site dates back to about 500 or 600 in its legacy. It is the oldest continually visited pilgrimage site in Great Britain. It's called the Lords of Wales. It's that kind of site. So people come here seeking healing. And what you don't see is off to the side, there's some changing rooms there. People actually get in the water. Now, I was there on a day that was rainy and cold. It was a Saturday. There was one other person there part of the time I was there who left, and then I was there all by myself. The only person with me was the docent in the gift shop, who I learned some stuff from along the way. St. Winifred is portrayed as a virgin martyr who was beheaded by a guy named Caradoc, who was a local prince after she spurned his advances. And a spring rose from the ground at the spot where her head fell, and she later her head was put back with her body, and she was restored to life by her uncle, Saint Bueno. Now, I had trouble believing some of this stuff. And yet, for centuries, people have come here and found healing. Richard I visited the site in 1189 to pray for the success of his crusade. In the late 15th century, Lady Margaret Beaufort built this chapel, paid for this chapel over the well. Now, does anyone know enough about British history to know who Lady Margaret Beaufort was? Helen.
She was an illegitimate daughter of John Gaunt, and his mistress, later wife, Catherine Swinford.
And her grandson was?
King
Henry VIII.
Henry VIII. I'm trying to remember which.
How did this Roman Catholic pilgrimage site survive Henry VIII's abolition of the monasteries and destruction of all things Catholic?
No signal.
No signal.
Just family.
Well, my Jack's here.
It survived because his grandmother built the chapel.
Okay.
So what mean these stones? Sometimes the donor saves it, as was the case here. Now, here's a view of the actual well inside. It's built up around it.
Is that where you went in?
Yeah, yes. I'll tell you that story in just a moment.
Did you get in?
Not entirely. Here's another view of it, and there's other structures around it now as well.
Wow.
This is the front door to that chapel above it. It's around the other side. So the docent in the gift shop said, "Would you like to go see the chapel?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, no one else is here." And so she handed me a skeleton key. She reached in the drawer underneath, and she pulled out a skeleton key. I swear it was this long. It was like the original iron skeleton key in this place. And just handed it to me. And so I walked around the sidewalk, came up here, let myself in to the chapel, and that's what it looks like inside. It's very, very spare. And it looks out on the side over the well through those windows.
Does anybody worship in there?
I think they do some. It's not regular. There is a regular church adjacent to it that is not this building. So this is like a separate thing. I tried going into church first thinking it was the well, and it wasn't. It wasn't. Okay, we're not going to go there yet. So about the well, one of the poems that I've written that's in your packet that you can read later because it's the longest one in there, is about my experience going to the well. And I told some of you, if you were here 2 weeks ago, I told you the story about going here. Again, this is a place where people have come for a long, long time to seek healing. Miraculous stories abound about that. Actually, I'm just going to read you this poem. It does contain some profanity, so mild. And we'll end this for today. When you go to the well and are not healed, why? When pilgrims for centuries have found healing here with a simpler faith than mine, when dipping hands in holy water, wiping it across an aching head only makes things worse, what is wrong with me? Should I have stripped down and jumped all the way in? Maybe I needed to be baptized anew in this holy water. The woman at the well says, some are healed simply by being here. Not me. I'm made worse. The water made my head hurt more. Or did it? Maybe my expectations were too high, although I didn't come with any. Hearing the stories raised hopes. Seeing the holy sight sparked joy. Here's water. What hinders me? Maybe it was bad timing, coincidental. Nothing about this journey makes sense. 1 year next week. That's how long I've had this headache. 12 months, every day. Damn it. Most days I'm better than I was. That's something. Many days I'm still not good. That's something too. Going backward is the worst. Hope's dashed. New normal reverted. Fear returns. At the well, legends seemed outlandish. Decapitated and put back together? Immediate cures? Miracles? Maybe I don't believe. The sign warns against using the waters without proper need. Calamity has come upon the jesters. Maybe I'm a fool. God help me, I'm so weak. Seems I'll try anything, believe anything. And here I sit on the train, quietly weeping. It is the quiet car, after all. And praying that the trip will not be ruined by my banging head. My holy water now is coffee. The caffeine helps. Maybe I should make a vat of coffee and jump all the way. So in answer to the question, I was not prepared. I didn't have a towel or anything with me to get in the water, or I would have. So I knelt down by the water and prayed and scooped it up in my hand 3 times and ran it across my head as I prayed for healing. And after I left the site and walked back into town to a pub to eat lunch before I got on the bus again, I started feeling the worst I felt on the entire trip. And I don't know why. I do not know why, but the next 2 days were the worst days mentally and physically of the entire trip after I'd been to the Holy Well. And so that's why I wrote that poem. I wrote that poem on the train. So this was on Saturday. I wrote the poem on Monday as I was on the express train back to London to go meet Allison, who was coming to join me that day, and trying to make sense of the poor guy who was sitting next to me. It was a packed train. It was a rush hour train into London, and I'm just sitting there with I'm writing on my phone and just weeping the whole way. And he must have wondered what was wrong with me there. We'll leave there today. I knew I had more than I could get through here. With your permission, I'll pick up this part next week, and we'll talk about this more before we get to the art the following week, because I've got many other places to show you some remarkable cathedrals and stories behind them. I hope that's okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have to ask you because it's so applicable. Have you ever read any of the Brother Cadfael mysteries?
No.
By Ellis Peters?
Oh,
It's a series of about 18 or 20 books. Brother Cadfael was a Benedictine monk in Shrewsbury
Oh, which is near here.
in the 12th century. And it's about so many of the places you just described.
Someone mentioned that series to us while we were there. Yes, I think Allison maybe has read one or two.
And Derek Jacobi plays him in PBS movies. He's so good.
There's a PBS series on it.
Yes, there is.
Oh, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been watching a Netflix series on the Medici, which is about Florence, and we'll get to that next week, all the tradition there. Well, thank you for indulging me on this. I hope that you find it interesting.
Thank you so much.
Let's turn to our prayer concerns. We're so glad that you joined us in Discovery Class via live stream today, and we hope that you'll join us every Sunday when you're available. If it's possible for you to join us in person, we would love to meet you as well. We meet every Sunday morning, about 9:45, 9:50, in the parlor at Wilshire Baptist Church, 4316 Abrams Road here in Dallas. If you'd like to know more about Wilshire, visit our website at wilshirebc.org, or also check out our YouTube channel at Wilshire BC on YouTube.